The Truman Show Thoughts Film. Now, this video contains spoilers, and it's a long video, but there are time codes in sections in the description box. And I got this on sale, so anything negative I might say in this is not out of bitterness. So, my own quote-unquote film critic rating for this is an 8 out of 10, and that's also my personal rating. So, we are going to dive right into notes taken while watching. There. Now, I am going to refer to the show as if it's a person, in some of this video. Now, I am mainly referring to Kristoff, but I would say that there's enough evidence in the movie to support that it's not him making every single decision, and as such, basically, yeah, I'm referring to the people making the decisions for the show. I'm gonna just refer to it as the show instead of each time saying Kristoff and whoever else is making important decisions for the show. And you will definitely be able to tell when I'm talking about the showrunners. I suppose I could also say that, but I'm probably not gonna. And the show as, yeah, the actual show. Now, near the end, he says, "I told you to alert me every time there's a change in behavior, so he's not always present." At the yeah, at the very least, he leaves when Truman is asleep or the like. But what if he wakes up in the middle of the night and has a random idea? It's not. Then there are still people running the show, but it's Kristoff isn't, and as such, important decisions might be made. Let's see. At some point, Kristoff has to sleep as well. So yeah. I really appreciate that the movie opens with telling us that it's a TV show and having the first clue to Truman that his life isn't what he thinks it is. You know, I would also like to see a movie that holds off on both of these things, but I think it really works for this one. All in all, I'm not sure I really want, you know, hypothetically, let's do a hypothetical where I have complete godlike powers. I can travel back in time, I can rewrite the movie, I can re-edit the movie, I can recast the movie. I'm not sure there's much at all I would change. The yeah, I yeah, I'm and moving on. Yeah, since yeah, I would like to see a movie that holds off on both these things, but I think it really works for this one. The audience, by which I mean the movie audience, not the TV show's audience, can immediately take in what we're seeing as a TV show, so we can fully appreciate all the weird angles and such. And by seeing so many signs, and one of them happening so early, we can really see just how much it does take for Truman to to leave, as Christophe puts it, the reality with which he is presented. You know, and yeah, I think it's very clever and very daring to actually present so much of the movie as it does as the TV show. We see the TV show, we see the control room, and we see the audience for the TV show. We never move beyond those. We never see a single person who isn't involved with the show or watching the show throughout this entire movie. And that, I mean, the only real, like, I guess, yeah, the closest we maybe get is when, I'm not sure I'm gonna call him Harry Shearer. I might just call him Kent Brockman, because that really, yeah, the abridged script points out that Harry Shearer spent all of 1997 playing Kent Brockman. There's this, there's The Simpsons, and there's Godzilla. It really is pretty wild. But anyway, yeah, Kent Brockman says, well, there is a small but very vocal minority, but everybody else loves the show. You know, it's interesting that we don't see. Yeah, really, the only anti-Truman Show, you know, we see Sylvia, and we see that, you know, it's very clear that there is a political movement. We see her, you know, the I'm gonna go with living room. She's got all these like posters and stickers and such, and there's evidently, you know, one of them mentions like a rally, you know, and there's, you know, a movement and rallies and this whole thing. So, you know, that is, but we never really see, you know, there at the end when Truman leaves, we might see, and I can imagine there was like an executive saying we got to see at least some of it, and you know, they stayed true to their vision. We absolutely should not see anything beyond and we definitely shouldn't see whatever the first thing Truman sees is almost definitely going to be a disappointment. I love that it is a door that leads into just blackness. When Truman steps through, he almost immediately disappears into the darkness because of the way that is lit. You know, just, yeah, I absolutely, the exact right decision, I would say. So let's see, yeah, we never see anything outside of the the show and the what's the word, reactions to the show. Oh, excuse me, I just realized I did not zoom in on the notes, which is going to be really, there we go, and there. Let's see, what was I, but yeah, again, I'm sure there were executives just really pressuring. It appears to be especially Peter Weir and Andrew Niccol. And ultimately, Weir altered Niccol's vision a lot. But, I mean, they didn't take Niccol's script away. They asked him to do rewrites. So that's something at least. And I'm definitely covering more of his movies. You know, I've got a couple on the shelf. Yeah, let me just briefly, the ones I own and almost definitely for sure are going to do videos on are Gattaca, which is, I would say, his best, but I'll admit I haven't watched all of them, and Simone, which I will completely grant can be a little, I mean, it's basically screaming its message. It's a little much, but it definitely has strengths as well. But I love his work, and I guess this is the only Peter Weir. I mean, this and the Dead Poet Society, I think it's called. I think these are the only two, and I'm sorry, I was probably too young to appreciate it when I watched it. I don't remember Dead Poet Society. I remember the, you know, oh Captain, my Captain, and them stepping up on the. I would know that even if I'd never watched the movie. That, you know, pop culture, you know, cultural osmosis. Although pop culture osmosis isn't a bad term either. So, but yeah, I'm sure there were executives trying desperately to convince them we have to open the movie on something other than the show. If we open the movie on the show, I mean, or interviews leading, you know, yeah, promotional interviews for the, you know, that's gonna, and really, I mean, in a way, it probably does throw some people. If you go into this having no idea what it's gonna be about, and the first thing you see are these interviews, and it just, yeah, that might really, you know, yeah, you're not, it's not what you might expect, and I love that about this movie, and yeah, you know, it is these, you know, get a couple of, you know, just brief little interview snippets with the lead characters, other than Truman himself, because that is kind of, you know, the idea is that he doesn't know that it's a show, so why would he be, you know? But yeah, you know, they introduced Meryl and Marlon, and both of them appearing out of character, you know, as actors, and yeah. Now, but yeah, I love that you know, the opening credits are the opening credits for the show, and that's why you have the title card, because the show is called The Truman Show, just like the movie is. And the you know, this was before. I mean, at this when this came out, it was very unusual for a movie to open without opening credits. But of course, today that is, and I think that really, at the end of the day, credits kind of remind the audience that what they're seeing isn't real. You know, so yeah, you know, yeah, I'm not gonna go off on a digression. Digressions are at my discretion, but I'm not gonna do one right now. Now, as I've said in other videos, I don't need movies to be realistic. The way I see it, every movie creates its own world, and as long as there are reasons for elements of the world that are not realistic, even if some of them seem inconsistent with each other, if there are explanations for the inconsistencies, I'd prefer there to be explanations for the inconsistencies. But I would rather they go with what they think works best instead of what would be closer to reality. Excuse me, this thing is always trying to update. And then when it's done updating, it says it still needs to update. So I'm going to tell it, ask me later. There. For the next 4 hours, it shouldn't ask for rebooting at all. Now, yeah, so sometimes it can be interesting to go into, you know, the quote-unquote realism. So I guess we should try to find a reason for why they would write into the show for Truman to try to go to that island via the ferry when they know that he's afraid of traveling over water. Can't be for the TV audience, since they would already know. I figure that it's probably to test if Truman is still afraid of water. They probably every so often do this kind of thing, since if he's no longer afraid of water, what's to stop him from traveling, since they know he wants to be an explorer. He's said it. You know, later in the movie, we see a clip from earlier on the show. He was like 8 when he first said he wants to be an explorer. And I'll grant, you know, there are people, not everybody keeps wanting what they wanted at age 8. But if, you know, yeah, you know, for some people, you they do keep wanting that thing. So, and you know, yeah, that was just the first of many times he expressed that. And something we can really appreciate, given that we know that it's a TV show, is, you know, when you know, this supposed flashback, it's actually being aired on the show. They filmed his father supposedly dying, and realizing that Truman's probably thinking of it right now, they choose to air it, which really exposes their cynicism. Despite how Christoph claims that it's a noble endeavor, his pain is the audience's entertainment. It goes beyond them keeping him in Sea Haven, where he's stuck. And I appreciate that the audience seems genuinely disappointed that they don't get to watch Truman have sex with his wife. And, you know, clearly, at least some of them would get some enjoyment out of watching this man have sex in front of the world without knowing it. You know, the really, there's this idea that people are entitled to every moment of some people's lives. And, you know, in reality, the Truman Show, you know, there isn't a real Truman Show. But celebrities, there are a lot of people who genuinely think they should get to see you know, they salivate at seeing that, you know, TMZ or something has some, you know, unappealing photo of someone in, you know, in a state that they didn't want to be seen by the world. You know, I swear I'm gonna try not to go on too many diatribes like that, because if I do, we'll be here all day, and I realize, excuse me, it's not necessarily appealing. And I mean, from what I just said, you know exactly what my opinion on this whole kind of thing is, so there's no need for me to go into great detail, and I try not to make negative videos anymore. it has been years since I watched this movie the last time. I had completely forgotten. We're just under 15 minutes in, and we've gotten three clear indications that something is very strange. The light falling from the sky, the rain only hitting Truman, and now his father's still alive. Yeah, again, I'm not gonna get into negative, but I saw that there are some people who thought that it was like boring or not enough happened. I really don't. I'm not gonna say that, oh, they're stupid or something like that. I just don't think they really got what the movie was trying to do. Because if you, that sounds arrogant. What I mean is, no, they might have understood it, but they weren't with it, you might say. And that doesn't mean anything negative about them. But if you like, they weren't feeling it. They weren't in the groove. Every single every single every single saying that I come up with to say it sounds really bad for various reasons. Just I feel like if the movie really grabs you, then it never lets go. Is what I'm trying to say, and I feel like, and that it happens. Not every everybody has like a viewing experience, you know, one or more viewing experiences where they just don't really get into it, and you know now. Another question for the realism might be how Truman's father knew to be where he is. But if you watch the show, which it's available, it's not like you have to pay a lot of money. It doesn't appear to you have people who clearly don't have a lot of money watching it, so it's not like it's not some kind of show you have to pay an insane amount to watch. So you know so the father, Kirk knows, he watches the show, and he knows Truman buys a lot of magazines at that particular stand. Maybe he's been standing at the stand for a couple of hours waiting for Truman to get there, Kirk has. But, it's early in the day that this incident happens, and that's when Truman buys magazines there. And it's not like all the extras and such are constantly looking at each other, trying to figure out if one of them is actually an actor who's not supposed to be on the show anymore. It and he kind of looks like a homeless man, which at the end of the day, a lot of people don't really look at homeless people because it makes them uncomfortable. Jim Carrey himself in 1997 wasn't the biggest. He in Liar Liar, he keeps trying to walk past him without giving money. So you know what? It's now my headcanon that Liar Liar, the Fletcher Reed is actually really, he has so little contact with his father now that the homeless man is his father, but they've both forgotten what the other looks like. So every day he's passing by his father. Anyway, yeah. So the right, yeah. A lot of people don't look closely at homeless people, and B, yeah. I mean, if he looks like a homeless guy, you know, they don't necessarily expect him to have a lot of have much to do with Truman, and thus they don't think that much about, well, is it yeah, about making sure if the person, presumably he doesn't have a microphone in his ear the way that clearly, when you see the feedback, everybody stops and like, oh, that's, and you see like a dozen people, because they're all extras. They all have the microphone there, and Kirk. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's possible that he went through the casting process, and no one realized who he was. If it's been well, yeah. I mean, it's been years. It's been like decades. So yeah, I guess that's there you go. What I'm saying is, I think it does make sense, and if there are people out there asking that question, I find that it's it's worth just briefly exploring what the explanation might be. I love Holland Taylor. show so badly wants to distract Truman from Sylvia. First, Marlon continues to play the trumpet, even though, and I hate to say this about someone when they're clearly trying, but he's not good at it. And then Meryl, quote unquote, falls on him, and yeah. And I like that they picked a dance that allows Truman and Sylvia to look at each other every so often without Meryl very clearly saying, near the end, she seems like, okay, she kind of, or at least at one point in the scene, she seems to, okay, she kind of saw it, but yeah. When the show drags away Sylvia and Meryl won't let Truman go after her, we again see that the show clearly does not worry about Truman's pain. He's clearly concerned about Sylvia, and because they're not certain that they can convince her to reassure him without also telling him that it's a show, they inflict this pain upon him, and, again, they're playing the flashback when they know it must be what Truman's thinking about. They're not only, watching what he does today, but they mine his memories for emotional porn. Basically, the, at first, basically the show, I mean, she's an extra, and Meryl is clearly who they've cast as she's supposed to be the love interest. They want to control everything in his life. It's not just about witnessing. No, they want control. Christoph and his, yeah, the people working directly under him clearly want to control and guide his life, even if it means inflicting pain that they don't have to inflict. Basically, hypothetically, let's say that, Truman and Sylvia, actually were like face to face under the show's terms, yeah, and the let's see, yeah, the basically the show would want her to just say, I have to, yeah, like the supposed father says, we're moving to Fiji, you know, but they figure that they probably can't convince her to do that, and it's not quite clear if they know that she wants Truman. I mean, I guess they probably don't quite know that the that she, if she could talk to him, she would straight up say, because then they would just remove her from the show. Clearly when, between the dancing and then him reading until Marlon and Meryl leave, clearly some hours have passed. So if they genuinely thought that Sylvia was going to be a problem, they would have just had, yeah, they could have brought in the father and been like, where have you been, young lady? Come, you have an early day tomorrow. We have to, something. So they must not realize, but they clearly don't want the two of them to interact with each other. And the way that they handle that is by, I mean, it clearly, Sylvia, when being dragged away at the party, clearly she doesn't want to be. And it kind of looks like, it's not, I'm not saying it's on a level of like a kidnapping, but it looks like maybe kind of an abusive boyfriend, maybe, who's like, yeah. So it is, and let's see, there's some other thing that I want to say right here, but can't remember. Maybe it will come to me later. I try to avoid being superficial in these videos, but I do think it bears saying you can really understand why Truman remembers her eyes for all of these years. She does have stunning eyes. I forget, I've probably seen Natasha McElhorn, I think her name is. I've probably seen her in movies where she has much more screen time than she does in this. And that's another thing. I mean, really, yeah, she has very little screen time. And she spends a chunk of her screen time basically, like, really, you know, getting very argumentative with Christoph, who, the audience might dislike him, the audience might like him, but he's being very calm. And there are a lot of people who don't respond well to a debate where one person is very argumentative and the other person is very calm. They mistake that for the calm person, having the like, yeah, that they're right. I'm not saying it never happens sometimes, but you shouldn't. It's not a one-to-one. You can't expect someone to be right just because they're calm. Now, let's see. So I could understand if some people maybe don't like her, but I would say probably most people do really like her and want her to, yeah, it's very easy to empathize with Truman's desire to leave Sea Haven. Even before he realizes it's a show, he he wants at least a little freedom. And that's the show refuses to give him that freedom. And in fact, the yeah, Kristoff outright says it there at the end. Sea Haven, or wait, yeah, he says when talking to Sylvia on the phone, Sea Haven is what the rest of the world should be. I mean, in a way, he is like, he was a benevolent dictator, but he is sort of a dictator. It's just that the yeah, the he would want, if he had the power, he would want to turn the whole world into this gilded cage. And he thinks that this kind of, I saw somewhere where someone pointed, it was kind of like this 50s through 90s kind of suburban paradise kind of thing. And yeah, and some people would be happy there. And that, that would make for a much less interesting movie. It is just on some level, yeah, when we find boundaries, we if we feel like those aren't reasonable boundaries, we keep pushing. Everybody wants to feel like they have at least some level of control over their own lives. Now, and we realize he goes to the beach because that's where he spent time with her. Why didn't he go to Fiji? Because his mother got sick, real sick. He's nice. Maybe he's too nice. Again, they don't mind upsetting Truman as long as it controls him and he stays on the show. They don't try to, argue him out of that. No, they emotionally manipulate him into where they want him to be. When he tries to turn down being forced to confront is it called aquaphobia? I get, his fear of water. The guy keeps pushing. You could say that, well, once Truman lies about having a dentist appointment, I mean, okay, so he's still afraid of water, clearly. But no, they keep pushing, and it is, it's a stronger, if he's just putting something off because he feels like, well, I'm not gonna like that experience. That's not gonna be as strong as a deterrent as if he has to. Excuse me. I mean, he gets out there and he sees this partially submerged, like, crap, what's it called? Rowboat, and and the guy asking, selling tickets. Do you want one way or return? And Truman's return is like, it basically, it is this thing of, do you expect to come back from there? They keep having these ominous, and ultimately he can't, cross the stream. And the yeah, it's almost too bad that there's not more of, crap, I can't quite remember his name, but the guy who pushes Truman to go to the, He's always very enjoyable to watch. I feel like he was on Sports Night, but maybe I'm confusing him with someone. I gotta watch that show again. Anyway, I appreciate the movie's willingness to literally put static on the screen, like on the people who pay big money to watch this in theaters got a huge screen full of static, only very briefly, but static. And they play the feedback noise, which also, again, in like a huge theater with booming speakers, must have been really unpleasant. It's daring to put something so unappealing in the movie, but it helps with the reality of the show and the fact that the movie we're watching is the show. Again, the only things we ever see in the movie are the show itself, the control room, the the Harry Shearer interview segment, and the audience watching the TV show. We never see anything that isn't directly linked to the show and responding to the show, responding to events of the show. Now, yeah, so it really, I mean, literally no one likes looking at static or hearing feedback noise. Now, and half an hour in, Truman really suspects that there's something strange going on. After the radio picked up the signal from the director, it builds nicely on what Sylvia told him, which the audience only just saw for the first time, but of course he was thinking about it since he was trying to find, you know, yeah, traits that look like Sylvia in the magazines. And that's such a sweet moment when she fully, we see that reaction shot of her watching the show, which Christoph, if she's, why does she keep watching the show? If hypothetically, if everyone stopped watching the show, they'd have to stop the show and tell Truman the truth. So her watching the show is in part, and I get it. Part of it is that she also is still in love with him, like he's still in love with her. So, but yeah, the reaction shot of her, when she fully realizes, no, that really, it's, he's trying to, he wants a picture of my face that he can look at. That it's such a sweet, yeah. Now, the fact that the cars stop without honking, without anyone leaning out the driver's side window and yelling at Truman, because they're determined to keep him content with the situation. They don't want to upset him in a way, or not in a way that might make him not want to be on the show in Sea Haven. You know that whole thing makes it way creepier than if it was just normal. You know, Even in the sort of 50s perfect suburbia that the show wanted to create for Truman, it really feels unnatural. Like it's a very like a kind of Stepford Wives kind of thing. It feels wrong. It just feels like just yeah, it's this thing of in the too many stray thoughts. Let's see. So there's yeah, Agent Smith talked about in the first Matrix, and it's yeah, just basically trying to make everything basically this is a world where everyone smiles, no one yells at anyone, and there's no you know so the yeah it's so they figure that them yelling at Truman, they don't want to upset him in that kind of way, but it just feels so unreal. I like the kind of subtle detail that Marlon was kind of a jock in high school, where Truman was kind of a nerd, and now they've ended up restocking vending machines and selling insurance respectively. So it is kind of, Marlin peaked in high school, and Truman, he kept working at it. It's hard to tell. They look just like regular people. Spoken by a protagonist of a version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, or They Live, or something. Man. And when we see, we see all the family photo, or yeah, the photo album in the yeah, we see, baby Truman in the crib, and it looks like he's behind bars. It doesn't just look like, well, they can't have him just crawling all over the house. It might be dangerous. It really looks like a cell. I love how obviously fake the Mount Rushmore is. It's like back when they did that, they couldn't make it more convincing, and they didn't realize how unconvincing it was in that. If they in 1997 tried to make, they could Photoshop something that looked much more convincing, but clearly, yeah, they got him in front of a they got him in a set, on a set, in front of, and took a picture, and when he's like, it looks so small, and Holland Taylor's like, everything looks small when we're looking back, and flipping over the page to the, just the moment that he actually gets really into one of the pictures, it's for the wrong reason. They want him to say, I mean, I've been in Mount Rushmore, I've, all these things, and it was such a long drive. You slept the whole way there, just, yeah. And presumably he was so young at that time that he didn't fully understand, today, but yeah, when they, in the yeah, in 1997, obviously he understands that from Sea Haven it would take a lot of hours to get to Mount Rushmore. So yeah, I yeah, I just want to briefly, let's see. Yeah, I think it's the editing room abridged script. Now, I don't want to go point by point and talk about why I think something is the way it is in the movie versus what they suggest would make more sense in the script. That's not what I want to do here. But they say that it would make more sense to just not show Truman anything that, yeah, I think they say, well, why don't we just say that outside of Sea Haven everything is irradiated, then he would never want to go. I don't think they want to. I mean, basically, he has, at one point, I Love Lucy is being shown, or has been shown, or something, and they have that movie, Show Me the Way to Go Home. Was that it? I don't know the movie, and I don't remember the title. So anyway, I I don't think that they want to limit. I mean, they basically, I Love Lucy, and from what the reviewer says, sounds like also true of the movie. It is this idea of, yeah, isn't isn't it swell to live in this kind of situation? They want to try to, yeah, it's, at the end of the day, it's not quite clear how much he knows about the rest of the world. He understands that there is a rest of the world. As a kid, he sees the map, and the teacher says it's too late to be an explorer. Everything's already been explored. So he understands that there is a rest of the world, and yeah, the I figure that they just don't want to put that limitation on the, hypothetically, if they said even once the rest of the planet is irradiated, they would never ever be able to show anything new from outside of Sea Haven, and I don't think they want to limit themselves like that. I figure, and Kristoff probably also tells himself, if no, if we told him that, then he, that would be like crossing a line. Then he isn't choosing to stay on his own terms. Now, the show hears, Truman tell Marlon that he wants to go away for a while, and responds by, I know it doesn't mean that, but photobombing him. There it is. Photobombing him and having a movie reviewer say, you don't have to leave home to learn about the world, and this movie's about how great small towns really are, and this sort of thing. They don't. It's again, on the surface it might look, but they're being nice about it and such, but at the end of the day, that really is the who responds to someone saying that they want to leave a certain place by telling them, by trying to manipulate them into feeling bad about wanting to leave. Outside of, like, when he says that he wants to go to Atlantic City, Meryl points out, but you hate gambling. That's a reasonable argument to make about someone going to Atlantic City. But there is a world outside of Sea Haven, and it's not irradiated, so they don't have any real excuse for, you might say, well, the moment that he says he doesn't want to be in Sea Haven, I mean, that's the end of the show, I guess. It sucks, but we'll think of some other idea for a show, and that's it. But instead, they go from just, observing this guy who, I mean, he's there, but it's not like they're keeping him prisoner, to, I guess we got to keep him prisoner. That's the way to keep the show going. And Harry Shearer says, well, other than this vocal minority, everyone loves the show. It's, yeah. Now, let's see. I guess maybe I should say photo album bombing him. Because photo bombing is still a pretty good term. Yeah. Meryl crossed her fingers for the wedding. And again, they bring this up in the editing of her script. Ultimately, it doesn't really make sense. Does she cross her fingers through the entire ceremony or whatever? And at the start of the show, she does say, well, it's a lifestyle. I am married to him. So for me, it's not a show, it's a life, or something like that, But it's a fun image, and Truman's reaction is so great. I cross my fingers for you, and for a second she's like, oh, did he see? Yeah. Man. I really love how they try to block Truman with all the people who get in his way. There's some people in wheelchairs who try to, really quickly, you know, yeah, roll so fast that they, block his path. And the guy with the shelves who does manage to, block his path, and then every time Truman tries to go, it just keeps. And then Truman grabs it and pushes it down the hallway. Just, yeah. I love them having to stage a surgery in front of Truman, and clearly the supposed patient isn't even actually, unconscious, and moves in fear when I'm now making the first incision. And he, lowers the knife, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm not 100% certain what it is. It actually sounds kind of like that game Operation, but maybe it is a reference to that. In which case, I'm 100% for it. But yeah, like they there's some kind of loud noise, and the patient, from lying still goes, just that's so, because that's what you would do. Like, who's gonna be able to lie still I mean, hypothetically, in her head, I'm pretty sure the patient is female. In her head, it's like, oh crap, is there something above me that's gonna fall on my head? You know, just you want to be, yeah. That's and then the guy comes in. This is not gonna be pretty, and covers the window and gets Truman away from that. But yeah, just excuse me. I love the "It could happen to you" poster. No, 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 really. Bolts of lightning hit planes all the time, especially in midair. Just that whole, just wow. And I love how, like, Truman sits down, we can sort of see it behind him, and then he leans back, and then we see the whole word, and he slowly turns and looks at it. Just, it really, yeah, I love it. I know I'm saying love about this movie a lot, but I do. I love so many things about it. And the little girl extra almost reveals what's going on because she's surprised to see Truman in the bus. It's like he's supposed to never leave. She didn't expect to ever see him face to face, and it's like, mommy, is that just just And it's like they gotta have some extras that are children. Excuse me, it would be a really bizarre world if all of Sea Haven, for Truman, if all of Sea Haven was completely child free, that would be really weird. But maybe they mostly keep them away from Truman since they might accidentally break character or something. So he'll only see them from a distance, and that's why there's a little girl on the bus. Because I guess I guess she is the only child we actually see outside of flashbacks. Yeah. Now, and the moment that the bus apparently can't leave, immediately all the extras get up out of their seats and walk out the door of the bus. They don't complain or ask when they can go. And Truman sits there, just he doesn't want to admit that it has to, yeah. And we see the TV show audience trying to figure out what the logic is behind him going to Chicago, and they really are discussing it as if they're watching a soap opera with a proper script rather than as if this is a real person who really clearly wants to leave his cage, gilded though it might be. They talk. Was his father from Chicago? No, no, no. His father was from Des Moines. His dentists were from Vermont, or some stuff like that. As though they're like it is TV show mythology to them. It's trivia. It's not like they really feel, when yeah, they're not discussing it as if he's friend or family of theirs, but as if it somehow is. Christoph says, we're tired of special effects and actors and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, they watch the Truman Show as if it is fully, I mean, I don't know that there's necessarily a logic to him going to Chicago. It might just have been that that was the first bus that would leave or something like that. And in the car when, let's see. Yeah, in the car when Truman expresses how badly he wants to leave, Merrill, sorry, tries to distract him out of it. Again, clearly Truman's wishes and desires are denied without. Yeah. I realize it's supposed to be funny, and we're probably supposed to take some enjoyment out of Truman's rebellion and the sort of balance of power shift where now Truman has power over Meryl, where usually she's the one who knows what's really going on, and she can affect Truman where he might feel bad about doing, she can say and do things that might make him feel bad for doing them to him because she knows that it's a show, and to her, the idea of him leaving Sea Haven means something very different to these two people. However, I really don't like how abusive Truman is to Meryl once they really start trying to leave. She's clearly scared and upset, and he just keeps pushing and just, yeah. They set up a fire right across the road, and then Truman drives straight through it. That is legitimately pretty badass, both the fire and him driving through it. You're welcome, Truman. Oops. A combination of the actor probably liking Truman, as most people clearly do, and this perfect world where everyone's polite to each other, and, you know, so yeah, obviously, how could he possibly know Truman's name? But at the same time, he doesn't think twice. Yeah, and Truman is being nice and understanding about it. So yeah, I love the visual of Truman trying to fight off the guys in suits with Geiger counters with a branch. That just, there's something so deliciously absurd. And that's the thing. This whole movie, you know, so frequently he's blocked by regular things that you see in suburbia. He's it's not, there's never, and again, that's some, I could see, some executives might be like, you're you're painting suburbia in such a negative light. We have to do, no, can't we have, like, when he's being blocked, maybe there's like a, the just, what's it called, like, yeah, some, like a door shuts and blocks his path, but instead it's all, it's a person in a wheelchair who's clearly trying to hurry so that he can block Truman's path rather than just being in a hurry in general or something. And regular cars on the street in suburbia blocking their, them from driving down the street, and these kinds of things, and that is, yeah, on its face it might look pleasant, it might look, like a, yeah, but it clearly is, he doesn't really have freedom, at least not the freedom to leave the place. And yeah, and a lot of his choices are made for him. He clearly would rather be with Sylvia than Meryl. So yeah, that's, it's just, it's so good. They I mean, they do have some cop. The guy who comes up, isn't he a cop? I think he's a cop, and who says, "You're welcome, Truman." But they didn't have enough cops there, so it ends up with these guys in the suits and holding the Geiger counters, and he's staying there with like this short branch, like trying to just. That's really funny. And Truman, is clearly like kind of sad, and he says to Meryl, why are we together? You don't, you can't stand me, or you don't like me? Yeah, it's something like that. And she's like, no, of course I do. And then she flawlessly launches into an advertisement, and just, it's, yeah, again, like something out of Stepford Wives, or some, yeah, it's just, it's so well done. And I'm just gonna write, let's see, get Stepford Wives series. This is the second movie in a row that has made me think of Stepford Wives. The other one being Arlington Road, where there are children who are acting in a very Stepford Wives-ian way. So, yeah. The next movie I'm doing is Halloween 2. I'd be very surprised if that one makes me think of Stepford Wives, but I don't know. I guess there's some chance I'm in the Truman Show, and this is, they've decided they really want me to do videos on the the Stepford Wives movie series, but whatever. I think she does an incredible job in that. It really is just so creepy, and it really does show this is not for Truman. It's not, to make him feel, hypothetically, if they wanted to, like, what's the, if they wanted to reassure him, maybe have her suggest couples counseling or something, but launching into an advertisement just completely, yeah, it's clearly not about him actually being happy. They tell themselves that it's okay to do this to a person who doesn't know because they're making him happy. Look at this perfect world that he's in. So but then at the end of the day they don't. If it would mean breaking format, if it would mean, I'm sure couples counseling, in the 50s and 60s, that wasn't something that people thought was, no, you should be able to, that you shouldn't go to a couples counselor. So, yeah. And yeah, in the kitchen, again, I really wish that Truman wasn't so abusive, including physically towards Meryl. I get that they're doing it for escalation. It's really reminiscent of what it does look like many times when someone actually has a breakdown and takes it out on their partner. Often partners are the the ones to feel the brunt of someone being abusive. And yeah, it's I really, I do wish that they didn't. I feel like they could maybe get there without, at least without it. Yeah, yeah, just hypothetically, let's say that if he's going to get that physically, like, yeah, comparatively, I don't have a problem with him fighting Geiger counter guys off with a branch, because it's not, these guys are there to try to stop him. If he does hit them with a branch, I mean, they signed up for this kind of thing. It's and they are, at the end of the day, if any of them genuinely feel that, okay, we shouldn't be doing this, they can back out. I'm sure they'll lose money and be fired from the job and such, but they are they're choosing to fight a guy who has a stick. So that, but Meryl clearly, she keeps saying, "Stop the car and get away from me." Respect, in the car and in the kitchen, respectively. And yeah, it's really uncomfortable. I feel like they could have had, yeah, let's hypothetically say that he maybe raises his voice to her or something, and, like, let's say, yeah, yeah, then, like, a cop says, "I was just passing by and I hear you yelling at your wife. What's going on, sir?" And then he's the one that Truman gets physically abusive towards. Because, and I'm not saying that it's okay to attack a cop. I'm talking about, in this piece of fiction, at the end of the day, a cop is trained to handle this kind of thing. But, yeah, it's, there you go. That is one thing that I would change if I could. That is the thing that I would change if I could change. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Didn't have more of a woodchuck chuck parody there. The insidious nature of the show really comes into complete focus when we see that Christoph is literally feeding Marvin lines. That's another thing, excuse me, I'm sure that there were executives saying, we have to see Christoph more. People are going to forget that he exists. Because between the first time we see him and the second time we see him, I'm not 100% sure, but it's probably at least 40, maybe 50 minutes. And, yeah, you are, I really appreciate that we don't see that much more of him, because at the end of the day, we don't know how frequently Christoph is feeding the actor lines, but it really, yeah, and the editing, and, both actors delivering lines, just, they nail it. It's perfect the way they did it. And the show decides that if they write the father back onto the show, maybe Truman will stay in Sea Haven. But even so, they can't resist the attraction of soap opera. If Truman was thinking completely logically rather than lost in the emotion of it, which again I don't blame him for, why did his father come walking right then? Could he somehow hear Marlon? Again, I'm not saying this is a flaw of the movie, and the footage of the control room and the ecstatic audience really highlights how exploitative this whole thing is. It's, yeah, again, just nails it. And it really is the kind of thing where, and that's also something, I'm glad that the movie also acknowledges that clearly the control room are thinking of it as a big moment, because it really is. If you stop and think about it realistically, it makes no sense. Logically, why doesn't Marlon like take Truman in the car and then drive to where Kirk is? But no, he walks down the, yeah. One shot of the audience literally has a baby crying, being ignored by the entranced TV show viewers. I am really glad that I know enough, excuse me, about how laws surrounding the working with, there's no way that that baby sat there crying for like an hour of continuous takes. They get that shot and then they comfort the baby so it's not like scarred for life or being ignored for forever. Now, and when Christoph explains why they brought back the father, he doesn't mention Truman's emotional well-being, but merely explains seeing his father was what started the crisis, so logically being reunited with him must end the crisis. And Christoph and Kent Brockman briefly talk about how Truman was an unwanted pregnancy and legally adopted by the corporation. They don't talk about whether this is good for him or bad for him. And again, I really appreciate that little bit of world building, because it really is like, how did that happen? But yeah, he was adopted, so. And Kristoff seems to genuinely believe what he's saying, that Sea Haven is better than the rest of the world, and Truman doesn't really want to leave. That's why they keep being able to stop him. And I quite like that Kristoff's name could be taken as Christ or Christ off. So, not quite Christ. And, someone pointed out that yeah, you could take that to mean Satan. So he's either God or Satan, or maybe both at the same time. Christ in his control over all of Truman's world, and Satan in being able to effectively lie to a person about everything in his life. Now, if I recall, this is Jim Carrey's very first dramatic role, at least in film. So the fact that he does do some shtick and comedy, other comedy in this, maybe they were worried that people would not be able to accept the Jim Carrey movie completely without it. And I definitely will acknowledge that this movie could potentially be extremely depressing if there wasn't comedy in it, and if Truman himself didn't appear to sometimes enjoy himself, if no part of his breakdown was played for laughs at all, for example. And yeah, it's, I love his comedic work, what I've watched of it anyway, and I love his more dramatic work, what I've watched of it anyway. But I do think, there maybe could have been a little, let's say 20% less of the comedy and shtick in this, because like when he's in front of the mirror and drawing on it in soap and saying weird things there, that really feels like a Jim Carrey thing. That feels like something they wrote knowing that he was going to be cast, or rewrote once they knew that he was cast, or something like that. Now, I like how Truman's Day is now presented as a montage. There's this sense of things won't change, of him seemingly accepting staying in Plato's cave, despite now knowing with certainty that there is an outside to the cave, even if he hasn't yet seen it with his own eyes. I like the detail that they're eating and exercising while half-heartedly directing, because, clearly Truman is asleep and they don't need to be on all the time. I mean, logically, at some point, they must need to eat, exercise, and sleep and the like. And Christoph realizes that there's something going on. Marlon really does try to stay in character while looking for Truman and manages most of the way, but he can't help but slip out of character at the end. Thinking about it, a lot of the time when we see Marlon, if we see the control room, Christoph is telling him what to do and or what to say. I'm not sure I'd really thought that much about it until this viewing, but for all we know, he's almost always feeding Marlon lines. It's, yeah. There aren't very many times where he could be, and we don't see him do it. And in the bar, the audience reacts to the screen going black as if it's a heart monitor flatlining or something. And the moon becomes a giant searchlight, and all the actors and extras walk the streets looking for Truman. After maintaining a sunny facade for most of the movie, now the show really shows the bars of the cell. At first we're told that the Dalmatian isn't actually going to attack. It's just but now it looks like it actually might. It looks like an attack dog. It makes you think of like a concentration camp rather than just your neighbor's dog, which might be a little aggressive but not dangerous. Cue the sun. I like the detail that although we see almost nothing of her in the movie overall, now that the new love interest for Truman has been introduced as working at the firm and thus on the show, I would almost definitely say that she was cast specifically for, she wasn't anywhere on the show before they needed a replacement Cheryl. Now, but yeah, now she's on the show. She's walking around Sea Haven just like the rest of the cast, looking for Truman. And let's see. And I'm not sure that we see Meryl there, so she really did completely leave the show. They didn't just put her in, yeah. I like the detail that they're getting higher ratings with the technical difficulty sign than the show. Even though not everyone watches the show, everyone wants to know what happened. And they start taking bets on whether or not he'll actually make it. To them, it really is just entertainment. They don't consider Truman a friend or family member, but a celebrity who dances for their entertainment, whether he wants to or not. Taking bets on whether someone's going to make it, that's the kind of thing you do with, like, a sports star or something. There we go. Bottom line is, they can't drive the boat. They're actors! And Paul Giamatti and Ed Harris share a look and realize, they've always known it might come to this. They just hoped it wouldn't, and they wish it hadn't, but they're so determined to keep Truman in Sea Haven that they're willing to start a storm over the boat. And Chloe points out there's no rescue vehicle near him, and Christoph is convinced that he'll turn back out of fear. And a few minutes later, now we see that Christoph has accepted that Truman isn't going to turn back on his own, and he orders them to capsize the boat. Excellent acting by Jim Carrey when he realizes he's found the very edge of Sea Haven. Really, I defy anyone to watch his acting when he reaches the edge and say with a straight face that you don't think he has acting talent, because that really is, yeah. And I love the he really, the storm is done and he's still sailing, and suddenly the thing of the ship crashes through the wall, and there's this, oh god, there's no way out. He reached the edge of the dome. We thought that maybe the dome wouldn't. I don't know. We didn't really know the details, and for just briefly there, it's like, oh, oh god, but then he looks, and yeah, there's this little bit of like, what's it called, like, I mean, he gets to the stairs, but at first you only, there's a, yeah, there's something for him to walk on, and then he gets to the stairs and the exit marked door, and it is like, at the end of the day, they might not have been fans of it, but certainly like the fire department or something was going to insist there has to be an exit, and you can't, yeah, there's got to be a way out of there, even if they don't intend for Truman to ever use it. They do a great job on Christoph's voice. When we hear it as Truman hears it, the echo, it really sounds like God's voice. And, we don't see just anything. No, we see the clouds and the sun behind the cloud, yeah, it feels like it must be God. Now, let's see. And when Christoph talks to him, sorry, yeah, Christoph talks to him, and we can tell he really does have some love for Truman. It's just that he doesn't realize how messed up the world he created for Truman is. But the way yeah, he's clearly, he's not like, look, you're my investment. You have to stay here. You're costing me money. No, he is like, I made you a perfect world, and you're on TV. Everyone's watching you. To him, it is this. Yeah, say something. God damn it, you're on television. You're live to the whole world. Excellent editing going between the reaction shots of the TV audience. It really is a huge moment when Truman does manage to go through the door, and we see the emotion on all the TV audiences, and Sylvia runs out so she can get to, to greet him. Although obviously, logically, there's probably some travel time between wherever she is and wherever he comes out of, but yeah. What else is on? Yeah, let's see what else is on. Where's the TV guide? I really love that they ended on that note, that it really is just, yeah, they'll find something else to watch. For them, it's not life-changing. To him, it is. To him, it really is everything. But to them, it's entertainment. It might be the... Gotta figure out a good way to handle this thing. Yeah, to them it might be their favorite entertainment, but it is entertainment. And the movie is 92 minutes, not counting the end credits. If you do count them, it's 98 minutes. So, yeah. I really appreciate how fast the movie gets moving, how early it gets moving, and how fast it moves. It really... Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't like calling people stupid for an opinion, but... And I'm not. I'm not calling you stupid if you don't like the movie. I just feel like it it didn't really grab you the way that it is supposed to, and that's not necessarily your fault, but that's why you found it boring, because it really is, it's very eventful. There's, yeah, I mean, given the concept, it could very easily have been long and boring, because at the end of the day, a lot of suburbia, it looks nice on the surface, but it's not like, I mean, it would be one thing if like Truman was actually James Bond or something, so that the audience and he, it was constantly this, but no, I really don't think that it ever gets boring. The Yeah, Truman's life and his experiences and his past and all this, it really, yeah. So that brings us to the next section, which is called Notes Taken Before Watching. I kind of already said this, but just briefly, I am not going to rant about reality TV shows in this video. Excuse me. I don't currently plan on doing a video where I rant about reality TV shows. Now, I love the fact that this movie's made the way it is. I will say I would like to see another. I'm not saying I want to change this movie to that, but I'd like to see another movie. Maybe it already exists and I just don't know. I'd like to see another movie wherein the protagonist does know that he's on the show, and maybe like he does extreme things to increase viewership or something. I think there could be something interesting there, showing how far someone's willing to go. And I feel like I am just about to rant about reality TV, so I'm just gonna, yeah. Now, I watched the Hidden Meaning in the Truman Show, Earthling Cinema. I don't have anything to say about the video. It's funny and insightful, like a lot of the Earthling Cinema ones. And I watched The Truman Show, What It All Meant. Good points made. I don't really have anything to add. And What the Truman Show Teaches Us About Politics. Good points made. It was very stimulating of a video. Excellent video. I've subscribed to them. I found it just, I did a YouTube search for the term The Truman Show, and these were some of the top videos that came up. So I figured, I did the search specifically to find videos like that. Or, yeah, to find a video like that. The Earthling Cinema one, I'm already subscribed to them. No, sorry, I already watch all the Earthling Cinema, the main ones. No, yeah, I don't watch other stuff on the channel. And I read the abridged script on the editing room. I don't really have any comments. It's funny and clever like a lot of the editing room ones. And yeah, like the stuff I have anything to add on, I already talked about. So, oh wow, that was a short section. That brings us to IMDb, Wikipedia, and critic sites. That's it. And there. So, let's see. Right. So the tomato meter, the critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes. A funny, tender, and thought-provoking film, The Truman Show is all the more noteworthy for its remarkable, prescient vision of runaway celebrity culture and a nation with an insatiable thirst for the private details of ordinary lives. And yeah, that is very true. And I'm not sure when they wrote that, but based on the way it's phrased, it's almost definitely from after it wasn't written in 1997. I actually don't know how old Rotten Tomatoes the site is, but it sounds like it was written some years later, and yeah, it excuse me, the movie predicted some things, excuse me, that weren't as bad at the when it was made, before it was made. It has a 94% on the tomato meter with 126 reviews total and only 7 rotten ones. Now, and 89% audience score with 583,174 ratings and the average rating of 4.13. So, let's see. It's too bad I don't have written down which of these are rotten reviews, but let's see. Yeah, you can't take your eyes off Jim Carrey. He's the most likable clown since Charlie Chaplin. His sunny smile lightens the serious subject matter. He's the perfect subject to make reality TV a reality. It really, like, this movie, like, hypothetically, let's say that someone wanted to make it as more of a serious kind of movie, and not all the you know and play the satire darker and not have the lighthearted moments and such. You know, I don't know. Let's see. Who would someone who does action? Let's say Chris Evans. Let's say Chris Evans played it in a you know in like one of the darker Captain America performances or something. The yeah, yeah. I think it would have been too dark. It would have been really, really just at the end of the day. Excuse me. At the end of the day, if you stop to really think about it, the idea of Truman being trapped for, I mean, he's supposed to be what, 30 or something when if he's wanted to escape since he was 22 years, where he's just been doing the same thing every day, just hoping that eventually he would get to leave, you know. And the reason he doesn't leave is that his father drowned in front of his eyes, and that his mother became very sick when he wanted to see the girl he loved again. It's if you don't have the light approach, it would really be extremely depressed. Like this guy, I saw somewhere online where someone said, he's never gonna be happy. He's gonna have trust issues for the rest of his life. And again, I agree, and that's part of why I think it's, we need to not see the exactly what he sees when he leaves. And like, let's say that someone did like you know yeah, Jim Carrey's still in movies sometimes, I think, these days. So let's hypothetically say that like he made a Funny or Die video where he again plays Truman, and we hear him talk about how awful it was to face reality after living in Sea Haven for the first 30 years of his life. It would just be so depressing. And I mean, I'm sure they could make it funny in that sort of way, but I think the light moments in this movie are extremely important, because we really it shouldn't be as you know it's almost unbearable. It would be unbearable. It would be unbearable to watch if it was as depressing as it would be if not for the light moments. Like, 98 minutes, there are much longer movies, and there are depressing movies that are, much longer, but just no, it's definitely the fact that the yeah, I really think they made the right decision about not making it incredibly, yeah, incredibly sad and depressing of a movie. One of the smartest, most inventive movies in memory. It manages to be as endearing as it's provocative. Right, just briefly, for people who are new to my format here, I am scrolling through the Rotten Tomatoes reviews to see if there's something I want to highlight or comment on. And the premise of Peter Weir's The Truman Show is both reasonable and ludicrous, its execution sublime. I think that's very, very well put. Yes. And let's see, what was I gonna say? Let's see. Hmm. The Right, yeah. I just briefly want to say I did read all of these before watching. It's not the first time I'm reading them. Most movies are lucky to have one idea rattling around inside. The unusually resonant Truman positively vibrates with themes. A disturbing, spooky, but eventually uplifting drama, satire, horror film starring Jim Carrey. Yeah, that's the thing, parts of it are really a horror movie. It's, people are smiling and everyone's saying that, it's so great to be, here in Sea Haven, and we have such nice times together, and he's got a best friend, he's got a nice wife, all these things. But at the end of the day, he literally can't trust any of them. You know, just imagine what it would be like if everyone around you was completely impossible to trust. I it's not really a surprise that there are some people who have, you know, yes, some of the people who have schizophrenia, they think, one of their delusions is being on the Truman Show. That their life is actually like the Truman Show, not the movie, depicting the show. And I, yeah, I just briefly want to clarify. I'm not saying, and I'm not sure anybody is, that the Truman Show, the movie, made someone think that, made someone believe crazy things about their life. It's just that that was the direction it took because the you know they watched the movie. There's always going to be some outlet. It's going to manifest in, if someone is schizophrenic, they are going to imagine things that aren't real, and that's going to take the shape of whatever has kind of the idea that has gotten, an idea that makes sense to them or something. I'm not a psychiatrist, but that's my basic understanding of it. And it's not that people watch this movie and then suddenly they start believing, crazy. I mean, it might be a trigger, but it doesn't mean that the movie did it. It's just it happened to be the trigger. It's not the what's the word? Yeah, it's not that the movie itself by itself makes people believe crazy things. The Truman Show finds a near miraculous balance of humor and feeling in the keen intelligence of the script by Andrew Niccol and the prodigal inventiveness of Dead Poet Society director Peter Weir at his very best. And yeah, so many of these reviews are really well put. I'm not gonna read, they're online. You don't have to like pay to read them or something. So, go on Rotten Tomatoes. If you like the movie and you want reviews about it, the Rotten Tomatoes ones are great. I want to try to find one that I have more of a. Excuse me. Now, let's see. Weir's touch is light and effortless, the film's pleasures falling as gently as the Mozart music piped from Sea Haven's sky. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is one of the rotten reviews. By trying too hard to be profound about the evils of television, this implausible sci-fi morality tale stretches this theme beyond the breaking point. I can see what she means by that, and it's sorry, that kind of looked like I had to check for, like, I read the name, let's see, Betty Joe Tucker. It's not that I was like checking for other signs of, yeah. And that's Housefly. and I guess it's gone. I guess I don't quite agree with her, or at least I wouldn't go as far as her, but I do think I definitely she's kind of saying that it took too many steps in that direction, and I would basically say it kind of leans in that direction, maybe takes a step or two too close to being too far, but I'm not sure I would quite say that it goes too far. Now, yeah, one of them uses the term junk culture excess, which is quite true. The movie might have been a soulless exercise without Carrie. With him, it has an authentic tremulousness and also a dread, as if Pinocchio needed to take on Geppetto and Jiminy Cricket to become a real boy. That's, yeah, well put. And okay, yeah, this also sounds like it's a rod. When I read them, I checked which ones were rotten, but I didn't think to write it into the notes. Weir keeps things fairly entertaining and is admirably not afraid to veer more towards drama than comedy, but his film, like the world it portrays, is all surface. I yeah, I don't agree that it's I guess I guess I can kind of understand what he means, but the I mean I guess I think it can maybe kind of come off as surf you know superficial, but I would say that given it decided to constrain itself, like I said, the only thing we ever see is directly related to the show. We see the show itself, we see some of the audience watching the show, we see the interview with Christoph about the show, excuse me, and we see the control room. Those are it, and those do, excuse me, make it harder to, excuse me, to get more past the surface, but I would say it still manages. And I guess that might be about it for the reviews. And yeah, nearly through all of them. Apologies for the dead air. I'm going to try to find something to say. Terry turns Truman into a postmodern Capra hero. Very well put. And let's see. Okay, and Rotten Tomatoes user reviews. And I'm only at the first 5 pages since we could go on forever with these, as I in fact used to. Thought-provoking drama. And like I said, like a very long episode of Black Mirror. And I guess that is about it. And Metacritic Pro reviews, critic reviews. Delicately subversive, hypnotically sardonic, full of terror, banality, and wafer-thin lyricism. Yeah. Right, and it has a 90 out of 100 on Metacritic from the critic reviews. The most negative review gave it a 67 out of 100. And it's really not that, at least the little part of the review that they put there isn't particularly negative. And that gets us to the Metacritic user reviews, which gave it a 6.9 out of 10 with 865 ratings, 637 of them positive, 29 mixed, and 199 negative. Wow, so that is actually almost a third as many, yeah, like, yeah, 3 times as many positive as negative, but that's still a lot of negative. And that's, a lot of the people who, or there are several user reviews that criticize that it's been given so many, negative ones, and unfortunately some of them really insult the intelligence of the people. I don't think that, excuse me, yeah, it's not, I think they just, it didn't grab them, and, that happens sometimes. I don't think that, like, if you write a review, yeah, hypothetically, yeah, like, if someone writes a review, for me to say that that person is stupid for the way they're reviewing it, I guess something like, yeah, let's hypothetically say that they reviewed the movie as if it's hypothetical. Let's say that they were reviewing a movie from 1950 and saying that why doesn't it, where's the CGI or something, something like that. But, the people who say that this just didn't have enough action, I, really? I mean, I guess not. Well, yes, not action as in, it's not an action movie. And I guess if you like, okay, hypothetically, let's say you went into this movie and you thought that there would be way more of Jim Carrey driving around trying to get past certain, and you watch the movie and on the one car chase, and okay, I guess I can see, but I mean, it wasn't really advertised as an action movie. Yeah, I don't know. And hypothetically, let's say that someone reviewed this and said this is a bad movie because it would actually be amazing to live in this suburban, life. That's also, anyway. Okay, so yeah, I highlighted a review here. Truman Show is an undeniably great movie. However, I feel the TV show aspect should have been kept a little more secret and only revealed at the end. Would have made a great mystery or rug pull movie, but the Truman Show we have is excellent anyway. And see, I think it would be interesting to have a movie like that. I just don't want the Truman Show to be that movie. I want someone to go and make Truman Show, but you only at the end it's actually a show, and yeah, I think that could be. Let's see. But yeah, a bunch of the people who wrote reviews of it, user reviews of it, gave it like 9 and 10 and such. So I guess I could try to find if there's a single like really negative review that I have something interesting to say about. And excuse me. Yeah, there's a guy here who says, I got lost a few times in the movie, did not understand what was going on. I I hate to tell you, but I really think if that's the case, maybe don't review it. Maybe at the very least, like, see if there were a lot of other people who are also confused, and maybe like look up, try to answer the questions that you have. Instead of writing, I don't understand this on the internet. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, there are definitely questions in this movie, but it's not that difficult to follow. Ultimately, again, I figure, I don't know, maybe this reviewer is not, maybe they're a child and they just don't, maybe they don't know enough about the world to maybe that's why they had a hard time, following it. But yeah, I mean, it's not for everyone, but yeah. Let's see. Yeah, there are several people who say they don't understand it. Let's see. Yeah, and some of the negative reviews say Jim Carrey's supposed to be funny and he wasn't that funny in this movie. He wasn't funny in enough of the movie. I rewatched the trailers just a few days ago. I understand how people went into this expecting Jim Carrey to be funny from start to finish. They didn't really know how to advertise. And I also saw some reviews saying that, they didn't really know how to advertise a dramatic Jim Carrey. And yeah, if you don't watch the movie, if you just watch the trailer, it does kind of give you the idea, give you the impression that it's going to be him being funny the whole time. And I completely understand. And that's really, at the end of the day, yeah, if the reviewers who didn't like it, they're free to. I just, personally, I try not to. If there's something I just do not understand, I try to avoid just saying a lot of negative things about it, because it's just gonna bother the people who do understand it, or at least feel they understand it. Now, let's see. Yeah, there's one guy here who says he hates that at the end he goes good morning, good evening, and good night. I mean, he's basically just, Christoph says you have to say something, and so he does. It doesn't mean, yeah, I don't know. That the ending doesn't work for everyone. Wow, a lot of people gave this a 10 and a 9. Okay, so yeah, yeah. Here's a guy who says, I didn't like that they were mean to Truman. I don't like that his wife is mean. Weird how they trapped in his own world. Just, yeah. Let's see. And more 10s and 9s. And occasional 8. And that brings us to IMDb. These are some great taglines. All the world's a stage. The story of a lifetime. On the air, unaware. The world is watching. We like to watch. Watch what happens. Just really, really great. Yeah. Ed Harris and Jim Carrey never met during filming. That's, yeah, that's wild. I do appreciate it doesn't say that they never heard each other's voices. I hope that when they filmed Christoph talking directly to Truman, that they could hear each other's voice or something. That, yeah. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. I'm moving into the IMDb trivia now. In an interview, director Peter Weir stated he wanted to have cameras installed in every theater the film was shown in, having the projectionist at one point cut the power, cut to the viewers, and then cut back to the movie. That really is, that's such a wicked idea. And I kind of, wicked both in that it's kind of cruel and wicked, like wicked, although it's not in the 90s anymore, so I guess no one says that. That's, wow. Yeah, I kind of, I hadn't written, neither IMDb nor Wikipedia says what, wait, did they? If they do, I don't remember why that idea didn't, I mean, I could imagine that maybe probably be kind of expensive to do all that, but I do think that, yeah, it's, yeah. And let's see, excuse me. The film is studied in media ethics courses, particularly focusing on the characters of creator Christoph, best friend Marlon, and the prostituting of Truman's wife Meryl. Excellent point. And the original script had Truman living in a recreation of New York City, but Peter Weir's changed it to an idyllic town to make the movie feel less sci-fi. I think it's very the yeah, it's very important to the movie that it is this kind of idyllic world. The moment that it's not, if Christoph didn't believe that he had put Truman in a perfect world, then he becomes a lot more, he'd come across as a lot more cruel. And ultimately, he doesn't understand that his actions end up being cruel, even though he genuinely doesn't seem to mean them to be cruel. He thinks that this is, we don't really know what his background is, but I mean, maybe I I could certainly imagine in part that he did not grow up in a particularly pleasant, part of. Let's just go with he did grow up in America. He grew up in a bad part of America, and because of that, he feels like it would be, you know, it would be so great if someone lived in. And he talks about how artificial regular movies are, or regular TV. Yeah, regular media is so artificial, and technically Truman is definitely not artificial, and I think they did a really good job, and I think it's the right choice to make Christoph genuinely care for Truman, and yeah, I he I think it was an excellent decision to move it to an idyllic town. People on the set were forbidden from uttering phrases. Bitten? Sorry, I just yeah. The Eminem's River. Listen to that very recently. So forbidden from uttering phrases from Jim Carrey's past silly movies. That probably was a good idea. Excuse me. Now, let's see. To help Harris develop the character for Christoph, director Peter Weir presented to him a 10-page biography. For this biography, it consists of Christoph doing a film on the homeless, for which he won an award. And several deleted scenes make it clear that Lewis, Marlon, truly does care about Truman and gives him a moment of redemption where he finds him during the search and lets him go. I gotta say, I would really like to. I guess it's possible it's up on YouTube. I try not to get too. I went way overboard with watching videos on YouTube about the movie before watching a movie for the movie The Siege, not to be confused with Under Siege, even though the Danish title translates to Under Siege. So I tried to stay away from. Maybe they are up, but maybe I'll watch them after this. But I it sounds good. It sounds like good stuff, and yeah. The lead scene reveals that Truman. Sorry. There. Nope. There. Brings to mind Darth Vader's problems with getting the spinny chair to spin him around the right way. It's his friend. Let's see. Oh. Yeah. The lead scene reveals that had Truman not realized what was going on, Christoph and network execs were going to broadcast the main show and it's spin-off on a two-channel format, the main show following Truman, and the spin-off following his unborn child, repeating the cycle all over again. Yeah, that really is horrifying. The idea that it just never ends. Just wow. Let's see. Now, yeah, so this is really messed up. A scene in the original script depicts a staged rape scene witnessed by Truman, who doesn't go to help the actress about to be violated and just moves on. When he's gone, the actors and actress return to normal and express wonder at how he didn't try to help or even do anything about it. I mean, this is Andrew Niccol we're talking about, so it's not really surprising to me that he would go there, but that is really messed up, and I'm really glad that that's not the Truman Burbank we got in the movie. In the movie, I really can't see that being, yeah. Jim Carrey and Peter Weir initially found working together on set difficult. Carrey's contract gave him the power to demand rewrites, but Weir was impressed with Carrey's improvisational skills. That was bad improvisation, and the two became more interactive. I could absolutely see that. You really get the sense that Jim Carrey cares deeply about the movies. I don't know, maybe not all of them, but certainly for some of them, he really dives deep, and it's yeah. I can imagine that he helped a lot and make the movie what it is now. While figuring out how to play the character of Kristoff, Ed Harris suggested him being a hunchback, giving him an unhappy childhood and a desire for Truman to have an idealized life. But he changed his mind after trying on a prosthetic hump and seeing what he looked like. And I do think it makes a lot of sense that Kristoff maybe had an unhappy childhood and wanting to create an idealized life. Jim Carrey has said that being constantly watched by fans and paparazzi helped him relate to Truman. That makes a lot of sense. Excuse me. The overall look was influenced by television images, particularly commercials. Many shots have characters leaning into the lens with their eyeballs wide open, and the interior scenes are heavily lit because Weir wanted to remind viewers that in this world, everything was for sale. I really love the brief little, Harry Shearer says, yep, it's all, yeah, Christoph says it's all for sale, and then Harry Shearer says, and you can call on this number, and we briefly see footage of someone like opening up this like dollhouse, and it's the what's it called? Yeah, it's a perfect recreation of I'm not sure if Truman's house or someone's house on the show. And yeah, Laura Linney heavily studied Sears catalogs from the 1950s to develop her character's poise. She did amazing. She really, like, excuse me, I've seen her in a lot of different roles, and, like, excuse me, she completely disappears into her character in this. The yeah, like I said, kind of Stepford Wives kind of thing. Just in this, she's so different from Breach, Kinsey. Yeah, just Excuse me. Now, right. Paramount was cautious about the film, which they dubbed the most expensive art film ever made because of its $60 million budget. They wanted the film to be funnier and less dramatic. Peter Weir also shared this vision, feeling that Andrew Niccol's script was too dark, and declaring where he, Niccol, had it depressing, I could make it light. It could convince audiences they could watch a show in this scope 24/7. Niccol wrote 16 drafts of the script before Weir considered the script ready for filming. And yeah, considering like he wrote Gattaca, and yeah, like if the the world of Gattaca is very, and it is straight up dystopian, you know, and yeah, I can imagine that his Sea Haven was dystopian, and spending 90 minutes in that with someone who's a prisoner and everyone can always see everything he's doing, that just, yeah, I I I don't think I I'm glad that the movie is the way it is. I think is the way to end that sentence. And Peter Weir had planned for projections to stop the film at one point during all screenings, cut to video shot by cameras installed in every theater, then come back to the movie. To make things even more meta, he flirted with the idea of playing Truman's director, Christof, himself. That, yeah, that's definitely interesting. Norman Rockwell paintings and 1960s postcards were used as inspiration for the film's design. They they really did an amazing job. I'm not saying that like the the movie could also have been amazing if it wasn't so bright and you know the supposed suburban paradise. But the fact that they did, once they made the decision to go for suburban paradise, they made so many such great decisions and clearly put in a ton of work. And it really is like, if you, hypothetically, let's say that you, I guess it's difficult to say. Yeah, I think if you show just scenes of this movie to a child who hasn't watched very many movies, they would probably think it was supposed to be a very happy movie about a guy who was happy where he was. Because it is, there are all these things that are signifying to, it's not the fact that the movie, there are places in real life that look the way the movie, they found a, I want to say, Florida city to film it in, or town, possibly town, to film it in. It wasn't, not everything is some set or something. There's a place that looks like this, and it doesn't have someone constantly being surveilled without his knowledge or something, but there are people who think that this is the way things should look, that if just houses and buildings in general, if they looked this like this, then people would be happy, so, and that is, I mean, if you're, I'm sure there are people in suburban, yeah, I'm sure there, some of them are very happy there, but, and yeah, it seems like superficially this is something that should make someone happy, is basically. Oops. Now, Instead of his then standard $20 million paycheck, Jim Carrey accepted $12 million for his dramatic acting services. Again, he wanted to make this movie. I mean, that's a pretty substantial pay cut, considering, I mean, it's a lot of hours of work for him to make one of these movies. So, yeah, I mean, that's almost half. And his passion really shows in a lot of these movies. Andrew Niccol rewrote the script 12 times, while Peter Weir created a fictionalized book about the show's history, enriching backstories for the characters and encouraged actors to do the same. Peter Weir has said that the film was based on Michael Jackson, whose life was also turned into a show for the world. And Truman's first name is a play on the words true man. And his last name is from the studio city, Burbank, California. Ed Harris only had a few days to prepare between accepting the role and his first day on set. That really, wow, considering, he did an amazing job in this. And he's another actor who, just not many days ago, I rewatched Enemy at the Gates because, what can I say? My father loves World War II movies, and, it has its strengths. Not everything about it is, the Hollywoodization of it is what bothers me personally. But it's well produced, and it does have some very compelling elements. But in that movie, Ed Harris is completely different from here. Robin Williams was considered to star as Truman Burbank. I could see that. I don't think it would have worked quite as well, but he was also R.I.P. He was also incredible, both comedically and dramatically. Am I having a stroke? I feel like a lot of words today are coming out the wrong. No, my brain has this thing where it kind of tries to skip ahead in the sentence, and suddenly I'm pronouncing something wrong. Now, let's see. Excuse me. Oh, hold on. This says that the movie is set 1995, right? Yeah, that doesn't really change it. I said more than once that I thought it was set in '97, but yeah, there's nothing. Excuse me. It doesn't change anything super important. It's not like it's actually set in like 2030 or something. And yeah, I just actually come to think of it. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'll just briefly say there is a Philip K. Dick novel with the same concept, and I mean at some point I'm gonna get to reading. I I love reading Philip K. Dick, so I'll get to it. It's yeah. So let's see. It took 3 years from Peter Weir receiving his first copy of Andrew Niccol's script to the film's completion. Part of the original screenwriting deal called for Andrew Niccol to have his directing debut, but Paramount executives later felt the estimated $80 million budget would be too high for him. In addition, Paramount wanted to go with an A-list director, paying Niccol extra money Two-step aside, Brian De Palma was under negotiations to direct before he left United Television in March '94. I I could definitely see De Palma. If he makes a movie similar to this at some point, I'd be very interested to see. Directors who were considered after De Palma's departure included Tim Burton, Terry Gilliam, Barry Sonnenfeld, and Steven Spielberg, before Peter Weir signed on in early 1995, following a recommendation from Nicholas. Sam Raimi was considered to direct and had met with Jim Carrey. I mean, I've seen the man do unbelievable things as a director, so yeah, I, that could be interesting. Excuse me. The name of Truman's sailboat is the Santa Maria, the same name as one of Christopher Columbus's ships. When Andrew Niccol was going to direct, Gary Oldman was going to star. See again. Yeah, there you go. There's a nice. That would make a great lead for a way darker, more depressing version of this story. That's. Yeah. Let's see. According to Peter Weir, the first season of the show was called Bringing Up Baby. David Cronenberg turned down directing. Again, man, I would love to see what his version would look like. And I guess. Oh, Steven Spielberg was also considered for. I mean, honestly, every single one of these directors, Bryan Singer, every single one of these directors, I'd like to see their version. Christoph Ed Harris does not appear until 57 minutes into the movie. I think you see him there at the very start also, but other than that, yeah, 57 minutes. Yeah, the original script was darker and had crucial differences from the shooting draft. The city was not a utopian city, but there were staged criminal incidents. Truman had a drinking problem. It is stated clearly that Truman makes love to his wife, whose real name is Hannah. Christoph's intention was for Truman to be Marilyn impregnated and the child would carry on the show. There were more clues to help Truman realize the truth. The scene where Truman confronts Meryl was far more aggressive. Finally, and most importantly, after Truman passes the door, he meets Christoph and the main cast members on a rooftop, while in the film the story ends with Truman's exit from the fake world. In the encounter at the rooftop, which was in the script, the actor stared at him sheepishly, but Truman, in his rage, attacks Christoph and tries to strangle him, but the rest of the actors hold him back. He is finally reunited with Sylvia. I'm sure that would have made for interesting movie scenes as well, but I'm glad it's not in this. The boat Truman sails on at the end of the movie is named the Santa Maria, the same name of one of Christopher Columbus's ships, when sailing to eventually find a new world. See, some of these are listed more than once because different people phrased it differently. I really wish that IMDb would just go in. I mean, just use that one. The other one has less detail. Anyway. And it takes us to Goofs. And I don't know why I'm yawning so much. I got a lot of sleep. Should have been enough. Okay, so that brings us to crazy credits. And yeah, I already mentioned opening credits are for the real Truman Show, which with lines like starring Truman Burbank as himself and created and directed by Christoph. In the end credits, the cast is divided between Truman's world, Christoph's world, and the viewers. And then we get to quotes. I mean, these are all great, so I'm just not. Yeah, I'm not gonna go into every single one of. Yeah. Yeah, real quick, there was the thing where when the show is basically on pause and Truman is sitting there drinking, I don't know, coffee or cocoa or something, and he looks so sad. He looks, yeah, and the show cynically runs a commercial. You know, it says, "Oh, look what he's drinking. You could be drinking what he's drinking." You know, just yeah, they really very cynical on the show. The movie does a great job of showing what the show is. Excuse me. There are a lot of lines from this movie in the IMDb. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So, alternate versions. A lot more pseudo-documentary footage on the making of the fictional Truman Show was shot but not used in the theatrical version. Only some short segments have been included in the released film in the pre-credits sequence. Segments of this outtake footage featuring Meryl Burbank and Marlon being interviewed and talking about their roles on the show and their personal lives have been included in some airline versions, presumably to pad the running times. And that brings us to connections. And I guess I'm not going to. So Show Me the Way to Go Home is a short movie. It's from 1932. Gotcha. And I'm just gonna rush through these. Yeah, maybe I do need more sleep. As wild as that seems. Okay, so and I'm not really have anything about soundtrack credits. And frequently asked questions. And yeah, it goes into how he clearly is angry there at the end. You know, there's a mixture of emotions when he finds definitive proof that the world he's in is fake. Let's see. And that takes us to Wikipedia. Now, the Truman Show has been analyzed as a thesis on Christianity, meta-philosophy, simulated reality, existentialism, and reality television. And that's I do think that's one of the yeah, you know, sometimes when people try to discuss the movie and they criticize things that are not realistic, not everything about the movie is supposed to be realistic. Let's see. Some of it is the way it is because of themes. guess it's pretty much. I guess that might be it. Excuse me. Right, and the last chunk here is IMDb reviews. And it's sorted by the most usefuls. I think it's the 25 most useful or something. Yeah. And I'm not going to read everything a lot. Yeah. You know what I'm talking about. You have the words, you make them a sentence. And as far as I recall, all of these most positive reviews are positive, but let's see. So far, they're all 10 or 9. Almost all of them are 10. Not all the reviews total, mind you, but all the ones voted the most useful. And, excuse me. Yeah, and there's some that rated 8 out of 10. Mostly perfect 10s, 10 out of 10. Okay. Sorry about accidentally hitting the camera there. Hitting the chair with the camera. Yeah, that's everything. So, for one of my videos, this is actually relatively short. I believe I've said everything that I have to say about it. I'm not saying there aren't other things to say. I'm saying I'm not the right person to say them. You know, the things, yeah. You can approach the movie from a number of different um, viewpoints. And I'm not the right person to talk about any that I haven't talked about in this video. So I hope you enjoyed watching. Oops. As I enjoyed watching and recording. And, you know, I had to do this. Good morning. And in case I don't see you,
good afternoon, good evening, and good night.